Hey everyone, we're in another AI conversation. I'm happy to be joined today by C, who I actually met not a few days ago before this podcast. But yeah, I'll let him introduce himself. So, C, welcome to the show. And maybe for the few people who don't know you yet, give us a brief background.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. So I am a solution architect. I did electronics engineering and IT at uni. Did face recognition, so kind of bummed that I missed out on the whole, being a Ilya Sutskever type thing at the moment. But hoping to get back into that. But I basically worked in defense for Australia. It was really cool. Worked in a mining company that was really cool as well. And then worked for a New Zealand startup, which I got into a taste of startup life, spending lots of investor money. Then when that company went under, tried to start my own business. I thought I could do it myself, and as a technical person, discovered that hey, there's this whole new side of it called sales and marketing. And but I did that. I tried that. I jumped in feet first, learned a lot, and then ended up most recently working at DXC, which is the old CSC and HP Enterprise Services company, which gave me a lot of experience. Basically, I could learn how to do IT services, pre-sales, delivery, support with spending someone else's money, basically, rather than spending my money, as I found out the first time. And now I'm ready to jump back into entrepreneurship 2.0. So that's me.
Fantastic. We actually had a good conversation last time we met in Manila. And you said you were looking to talk to people. Wait, so maybe the question is how did your trip go? Did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish?
Yeah. Look, the trip was primarily just really a holiday, um, with a bit of networking in it, right? So, I as you can see, I'm from Asian heritage. My parents are Vietnamese. They left after the war, and we were accepted as refugees into Australia. So, you can tell from my accent, for all intents and purposes, I'm an Aussie. I'm Western. But of course, you grow up in an immigrant family. You have ties to your culture and culture coming from ASEAN. I've never really done the expat thing, so I would like to do next the expat thing, and I would like to do it in ASEAN to kind of you know connect with that ASEAN culture heritage of mine. Last year, I checked out Singapore, and this year was checking out Philippines, and also for myself. I was born in the Philippines. My parents were refugees. Um, so I don't know. I think I'm not sure if it's my internet or yours, but I've got you back.
I think
So
I think we
yes,
blinked for a moment there, but go ahead.
yeah. and and so yeah, just a bit of time out, a bit of a holiday, but also just seeing what. I mean, if I want to go and live somewhere in ASEAN, it's nice to see what society's like. I want to do entrepreneurship 2.0, so it's good to see what society's like, what education systems like, how people live, and all that good stuff, right? So, which was really good. I mean, I had really positive experience, even in just Manila, right? So yeah, it was good.
How would you rate, just everyone, most people listening here are from Manila. So how would you
Mm.
rate kind of the vibe as much as you've seen when you
Yeah,
were here in terms of, I don't know, whatever, technology, culture, the people. I take it was the first time you visited Manila.
correct,
Yeah.
correct. First time I visited, I had been born in Philippines. I had left Philippines, but it's the first time I'd actually arrived in the Philippines, right? So the first impression was it's like there's a lot of shopping, which indicates to me people have the confidence and they're getting there's the economy, there's the jobs, right, to support that shopping, right? I'm sure it's more than just being hot outside and you just need air conditioning, to go into, right? So to me, that was the first thing that hit me. Food culture. At least in the places I was staying in Manila, it's just like being in Australia or Singapore or anywhere else, right? There's Japanese food, there's Korean food, there's of course Filipino food. There's
Did you
fast
get to
food.
try Filipino food?
Yeah. Tried Filipino food. I wasn't brave enough to try the little food store when I walked outside of Manila, on the road, stuff like that. But yeah, no, Filipino food. Tried. I asked for, stayed at the hotel, went to outside, and looks for the Filipino parts of the menu, and I caught up with a couple of my colleagues from DXC, and they took me out and showed me as well. So yeah, it was good.
I think you were mostly in the kind of the central business districts, right? Like
Yes,
Ortigas, BGC, thereabouts.
correct. Just for the audience, I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
only
Okay.
stayed in Makati, Pasig, Ortigas, and BCG, right? So
Weren't you supposed to hit like Puerto Galera or something, or
yeah,
did you actually get to go around?
no, didn't go in the end, but I'll definitely come back and go next time. Next time, well, obviously I didn't go to Palawan this time, but I'd love to actually go and see what it's like, right? Like where I was born. So I'll definitely come back and see that.
Yeah, that's going back to your roots if you hit Palawan. And have you been to
Yeah.
Vietnam at least? At least homeland?
So this year has been a year of first. So this year 2024 early in the year was also the first time I went back to Vietnam. Or
Mhm.
well, not back. Yeah, went to Vietnam, right?
Is this
So
Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi, or a specific area in Vietnam?
yeah, so so kind of like the my relatives are from Nha Trang and Hue, which is kind of like central,
Hmm.
and then we landed there and we made it to Ho Chi Minh. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I was there
Okay.
for a week. So I was there for less than the time I was in the Philippines.
Just a
But it
quick
was
in and out, right? And then move on.
yeah. Go to see. It was on the same trip that I went to Japan as well, which was so it
Mm,
was kind of like a yeah, just touristy things, right?
yeah.
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 Mm.
Okay. Well, one of the things that struck me about your profile is you did entrepreneurship early in your career,
Mm.
or at least
Mm.
early midway.
Mm.
You said very educational. It didn't end successfully as you'd like. And I'm sure there are a lot of people curious about kind of the entrepreneur's journey. So maybe I'll ask you about that. So how was that? Any crucial lessons you learned, and what did you do? I mean, what did your company do? What was the business all about?
Yeah, so a bit of background. So before I started the business, I was working for a New Zealand startup, right? So this company was called Wynyard Group, and it was a spin-off of New Zealand's Microsoft, right? So, firstly, a few things like where is New Zealand for a lot of people thinking, um, and then also what's this New Zealand's Microsoft, right? So, of course, New Zealand's like this country that's kind of in the bottom at the bottom of the world, even more down under than Australia, right? And when I first started at Wynyard Group, my CEO told me, "Well, New Zealand is like this trial market for companies, right? So if you're a energy drink maker, what you'll do is you'll release the energy drink in New Zealand, and then if it does well, then you can try the other markets, expand to Australia and the ASEAN and the other markets, or
Yeah, New
but if it
Zealand
doesn't,
tends to be a test market for
correct,
many
correct,
advanced economies, from what I heard.
correct. So that was the briefing I got from my CEO, and the company was a spin-off. I think it raised like 100, 200 million New Zealand dollars. So this wasn't, a small company. And but it was a spin-off of New Zealand's Microsoft. They were called Jade Software Corporation. So Jade Software Corporation is a company that started back in the 60s or something like that. And they had their own programming language and own, frameworks and everything like that. And based in Christchurch. But anyway, they they had a few products around logistics and case management, and they spun off basically what tried to be a turnkey competitor to Palantir, right? So if you can imagine Palantir, doing all this fancy data, and now it's AI, but it was just data analytics for CIA, FBI, yeah, all those agencies. It costs a lot of money. Defense can afford it, because they've got a lot of money. But what about other companies? So I think Wynyard Group tried to be a turnkey Palantir, and had some products that were quite impressive, at least at a demo and
Were
proof of
were they
concept.
also targeting, because I know Palantir tends to veer towards defense
Mm.
and security. So was that also the target industry or more of a broader base?
A bit broader, but including that as well. So if you look at Wynyard's products, the existing products that Jade had that were spun off into Wynyard Group, and then there was a brand new product. So the existing products were a case management product. So you can imagine for police, and if any body or organization does investigations. So in terms of government, you're talking about police, you're talking about other investigative bodies like things like a financial crime investigation, or things like I'm trying to think of those mind block, but I'm trying to think of those SEC and organizations like that do investigations, keep case notes, and then want to produce a body of evidence that can go into some sort of more other thing like a court case or trial or whatever, right? So that's that investigative case management product. It was used for other things like even for NGOs to investigate child what do you call it, child trafficking and things like that, right? And then also commercial investigations, right? So investigating people, background investigations, other types of investigations as well. Then you've got a governance, risk, and compliance product. Was the second product. So we're talking about, sounds very boring, but basically, managing risk in a corporation, right? GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. And then you could kind of merge those two. You'd get like anti-money laundering as well, right? Anti-money laundering. And then the new product was something called advanced crime analytics, which was meant to be the competitor to Palantir. If you can imagine, audiences, for the older people in the audience, you remember the show CSI, Crime Scene Investigation, right? And one of the memes or the tropes was zoom in, enhance, right? Or you have this network of people, and then you'd find these links between people, like hidden links and stuff like that. So that's what Palantir is, right? You can zoom in on something in a network, and then you can do all these operations. So ACA tried to be that, and it was based upon Jade's own database technology. It was an object, I'm getting technical here, but it's an object-oriented database, which kind of for a long time tried to be was one of those alternatives to SQL or relational databases before NoSQL was really big. And it worked great for, if you can imagine, for demos and POCs. If you did I've got a network of subjects of investigation and their bank accounts and their cars and their assets and everything in a web, it was great to do a query that consisted of maybe 3, 4, 5 hops, between the network, right? But once you got beyond about 6 or 7, the performance just dropped. And so it was really great as a startup to be a demo and to try and compete against a Palantir, but it was just kind of limited by its database technologies and maybe a few other things once things got really into production. But ACA, Advanced Crime Analytics, was that really fancy CSI type.
I should think it should still be pretty hot these days, especially with all of the geopolitical, tensions and cybersecurity. I don't know.
Yeah. I think you do see that type of interface where you can have that. You got databases like Neo4j these days, right? So I think there are better databases technologies that can do that sort of thing. But I think that kind of network analysis at the end of the day is still kind of limited by the actual use case. I think a lot of the reason why Palantir charges a lot of money is that, those types of analytics takes a lot of customization. It's the network thing is it's just a technology. At the end of the day, like any analytics project, you need to understand what are the questions they're asking of the data, and the solution really needs to be tailored to the questions you want to ask, right? Not so much the capabilities of the technology and what fancy queries it can do. So yeah, that type of thing is still relevant. I think it's the go-to market is kind of the trick, and maybe some of these things aren't turnkey. Some of these things just need
Very customized kind of solution, right? So,
customizing.
so wait. So you were working in this New Zealand Palantir, and then what got you? How did you get bitten by the entrepreneur bug? At least for the first time.
So Wynyard Group just ran out of money. I'd been there about 2 years. It was a good ride. I for me it was a bit of a. I came from a bit of a privileged background in that I worked for Australian government before I'd gone to Wynyard, and that's where I got my taste of kind of like law enforcement and working for defence and all that sort of thing. And when you work for the government, every time you travel, it's business class, and the government's got a lot of budget. And when I went into the startup world with Wynyard, Wynyard was spending money like there was no tomorrow, and so to me, I thought that was normal, right? And so when money kind of like suddenly ran out of Wynyard Group, all of a sudden we went to administration, and I'd been there 2 years, and I took my redundancy money. I thought, I've been a dev before, so I could build things, right? That's what I did at Defence, and later in my time at Defence, I was a team leader, so I could run projects. I thought, and then going to working for Wynyard Group, I was in professional services. So I thought, I can implement projects, right? Implement, train, do all that sort of thing. And I'd done a bit of pre-sale, so I thought, how's this? If I build it, they shall come, right? And so I thought, perfect time to take my redundancy money, try to do it myself, because I was a bit cocky. And then
So you were confident. So it wasn't out of because I'm just trying to relate it to when I started. In a way, I didn't get redundated, but I had saved up a war chest.
Yes.
I keep telling people I had about maybe 2 to 3 years of expenses tucked away.
Yes.
So it's perfect time to bootstrap.
Yeah.
But then I always had that sense of trepidation, I mean, maybe it's a cultural thing in Philippines. Most people would rather just be employed. That's kind of the safety net. But the vibe I'm getting from you, which is awesome, by the way, is I don't know, apart from your former employer going down, you seem to have this kind of this self-confidence that said, yeah, I have a bit of money, I'm gonna try my own thing. That for me is very refreshing. So is that an accurate description?
A bit of a mixture. So I tried to start my own business in some sort of way a few years before that. So I already had a go, right? Tried to have a go a few times, and a couple of false starts, because you have this. At the time, I was really a developer mindset, right? Not when I say that, I mean like having been a manager now, or having been in a leadership position, it's the classic case when you ask a developer how long is something going to take. In their mind, it's never like thinking about thinking about the average estimation, worst case, best case, average, chances of probabilities. It's always the best case scenario, right? So that's the developer mindset. The developer mindset is, yes, I can do it. I can I can do it quicker than I'm always going to do best case scenario. It's always going to be the happy path. It's never going to be the path
over optimistic.
Underestimated. So the developer mindset always assumes that I'm going to get it done. I'm awesome. I'm great. Everyone else is wrong. And so I guess when you start a business with that mindset, that's why I mentioned when I started my business, I discovered sales and marketing because it's a whole different mindset. It's about what other people need and want, not about how great you are and trying to prove how great you are, right? And so I tried to start a few businesses with some close friends, and we had some false starts. But I went through the motions of like registering a company and all that type of thing. So I'd already had that kind of that budding want to do something myself. But then it was opportunistic too. So for two reasons: one, I was made redundant, but then at the same time, a friend of mine had started her own business in doing smart cities, IoT, and they had sold a proof of concept to a government, a local government here in Australia, and they were having trouble delivering. Right at the time, they'd hired a developer on Upwork or something like that, and they were having trouble managing him. So I was asked to help out to manage the developer, and then I helped out on another bid, and then I thought, well, you guys are really good at selling. I can deliver. Why don't we have a partnership, right? And at the same time, I'm about to get my company's just gone under, so I'm going to take that money and set something up, and let's go, right? So a bit of naivety and a bit of that
Like a perfect combination of events and factors,
yeah,
right?
yeah, perfect combination. And also, I guess up until then, my first job was in mining, so I'd gotten paid well, and working in defense, I had ended up as a contractor, so I was getting paid well. So I was a bit, maybe a bit of privilege, a bit of naivety in that, I hadn't really experienced what it'd like to kind of, been struggling, for a while, and so for me, it was just give it a go, um, yeah.
And then how long by the way, I'm just having my nibbles while I'm listening to your great
Yeah,
story. I hope you don't mind. But anyway,
that's
so you started a company, perfect combination of factors. You linked
mm.
up with someone who could do the business development, and you can do the delivery. So how long did you guys go, and eh,
So
what can you
yeah,
share about kind of how did you end that journey? Because you said you had to end that and move
yeah,
on to
yeah,
another phase, right?
yeah. So look at that all up. That partnership probably lasted about maybe 6 or 7 months. Like it wasn't that long, but it took 1 or 2 months to get it set it up and get going. I guess I ended up hiring my previous manager from Wynyard Group. I ended up hiring as my first employee, and hired some other people. And I thought, look, I got, you know, it was worth something like somewhere between 10 and 11 and $15,000 a month, right? Was it about $10,000 a month, that partnership, right? And I had thought the partnership was going to be for a year, so I thought, that's 120 grand or more. I'll go and hire a few people. We'll deliver for these guys. That they've got a few projects in the pipeline, and then I'll spend my bandwidth getting more customers. Classic story. And then the classic story is, you don't, right? You end up helping out or firefighting, or at the time, for me, sales and marketing was new, so I was just discovering things and probably weren't spending the right the right effort and time, and didn't have my funnel right. So, didn't get enough new business. But eventually, the money got a call from the business development partner saying, "Hey, our money's run out." So I'm like, "Oh, does that mean money ran out for me? Is money ran out as well?" And went through that whole thing of making someone redundant, right, on our side. So that was it
That's
was
a
weird.
hard trigger to pull from experience.
Yeah, especially when you're naive about it, right? So if you can imagine me, I'm never had really had you come from Asian parents. All they've done is look after me all my life. I've done well in school, so I've never had a care in the world. I've gone and started this business with thinking la la la, everything will be fine. So everything's new, right? And when I'm hiring these people, I remember hiring this person. He's like, "Oh, I have a family. I have a young family." I'm like, "Okay, well, you realize that we're a startup, and probably go out of business tomorrow." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." But it's funny, Me, I don't have a lot of responsibility, but I'm kind of like responsible for the for other people, supporting their families and that type of thing. And then when comes time to make them redundant, yeah, everything's new. I mean, I think at the time, whole heap of emotions, but
Did
the
you feel
stuff.
guilty about it, like, or responsibility for, you know, their livelihood? So I've experienced
I
something similar.
Probably not as much as I do now. Appreciate it now. Appreciate it now a lot more now that I have responsibilities. But back then, I knew it was something big, but I think it was more around how do I do this, and not feel too bad. Um, I think back then it was also a personal thing. Maybe I didn't have as much empathy as I do now, you know. But I remember him saying to me things like, "Oh, can I still use the offices to find a new job?" I'm like, "Yeah, go for it." Can I? I think I even lent him some money as well. Um,
Yeah, that's part
so
of the journey,
so
right? It becomes
yeah,
very it's professional, but it's also personal at the same time.
yeah.
Kind of.
I think what you learn is, different people are different in terms of you may accept that you're in a startup and this could end tomorrow, and you may tell that to people, but people join that and they may not be on the same page as you, and they'll nod in their heads, and they're putting themselves at more risk than what you are or what you think, right? And that will just happen, right? And I think as a business owner or leader, you need to be on top of that, or know that's a unmitigated risk, right? But for me, it was kind of that. It was a personal journey, right? Entrepreneurship, first time around, for me, it was a personal journey. Everything was meaningful. Everything had a new lesson to learn from it, right? Whether it was good or bad, right?
And you learn a lot
And
about yourself as well. It's not just about
correct.
the environment. It's about how you deal with stuff.
Yeah, yeah, hugely, hugely. And you learn about, I keep going back to it, but you learn about the privileges that you have versus what other people have, right? But then also there's other side as well. Like once I just kept one person on. I kept my first employee, my old boss, on, and we tried to stay alive. So we did things like join hackathons. They had prizes to win cash or win stuff. Right?
Did you
We end up,
enjoy that? I had kind of had my start in hackathons as well.
yeah. No,
It's just
we
you and the
enjoyed.
problem. I mean, that's the nice
Yeah,
thing about it.
hugely, hugely. It was almost like a new project. Like when I joined it with my only employee at the time, it was like a new project, right? And I think even one time the other employees came on and joined the hackathon as well. So it was like the team was back again, right? But there wasn't that pressure of. It was almost like doing ideation with a new client, right? Pretend the hackathon is a new client. Like, what would we do, right? And we won one of these hackathons. We won a few hackathons, but one of these hackathons was an incubator, and we didn't quite officially get into a group, but basically we were in a group, right? We were in a cohort. We got given desk space, and it was nice. It was in an old church, part of part of a university. So all of a sudden, we moved out of like Watso, which is like a cheap poor man's WeWork. We moved out of like a WeWork into an incubator accelerator, old church, and there was a beer fridge, and there was nice meeting rooms, and I realized, hey, you know what? I can get free stuff. I can put myself out there, you know, and there are opportunities to get free accommodation, get free free internet, free offices, free food, and you're in a place where you're dealing with other startups as well, right?
Like-minded people,
Yeah,
same
like-minded.
energy.
Correct, and you've got guidance. I mean, the incubator obviously had its own objectives and strategic and interests and biases and whatnot, but you know what? Like it taught me how to operate. There's more than one way to operate as an entrepreneur, right? Like when things go wrong, you can and also what do you really need every day, right? You need. I was wearing the same clothes, I wasn't thinking about the clothes. I was wearing my old Wynyard Group clothes, right? I wasn't cutting my hair. I was growing my beard. I woke up at the same time every day. I went to bed at the same time every day. I went to bed tired because I worked every day. I was teaching myself stuff. I was networking. I was teaching myself how to network, how to sell, how to have empathy, how to prepare for meetings, with customer, how to do pitches and everything, And we're still trying to do some contract work on the side to keep us going. Um, but yeah, it was a really good in terms of personal growth. It was fantastic. It was excellent. It was
Yeah,
so good.
you keep mentioning selling, and um, and correct me if I'm wrong. You started out as a technical person. In entrepreneurship, you learn how to sell. Um, how does one move from being technical into becoming I guess, a technical salesperson? Was there do you remember any tips or processes that you went through to do that?
Yeah, for me, okay, I guess a few moments, kind of like you have the penny drop, you have epiphanies. One of the moments that dropped for me was at the time when we when our partnership ended, and we were in that incubator, but I was still looking around for contracting work, right? Keep money coming in. And so I remember at the time a recruiter said to me, every time you have a meeting, every time you have an interview, make sure you close. And I said, oh, what does that mean? Like, make sure you close, right? Like, treat every meeting like a sales meeting, right? And close. What are the next steps? Have I addressed all your concerns? Is there anything else we need to talk about? When will I contact you or you contact me? When, where, how? Make sure you close. And so to me, um, I just remember that as a moment where I'm like, okay, every interaction, and then you learn about things like the sales funnel and stages and stuff like that. And because also, I guess I was doing smart cities IoT. This is enterprise sales, right? So it's not B2C sales where you just have a few touch points or whatever, right? Or a well-defined process. It's more a process of relationships and moving along, right, like to the next step, and it's dependent on this specific customer. So I just remember from that thinking that switching my mindset from or picking up little disciplines, right? Like how to think from the customer mindset, right? When they are meeting me, what are they going to want, right? And also as a developer, I think you're used to, again, back to that, developers always thinking best case scenario. You never think about uh you know when
Like
you always
contingencies, you barely think
correct.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, contingencies. Like when I meet with someone, like there are things that I want from it, right? But what does the other person want from it? But then also, don't be afraid to ask. You know, hey, even before the meeting, okay, hey, check in. Hey, we're about to have that meeting tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Hey, just want to check in. Do you have everything you need? Is there, what are your expectations so that I can get it right? It's that being. I don't know if that's a sales thing or that's a Western
Just
necessarily or a
being just
Western.
being responsive to the
Yeah,
client,
responsible. But
and
also
proactive. Be proactive, right?
proactive. Don't be afraid to ask. Ask explicitly, right? Hey, what are your expectations from this meeting? Just to make to just, and you can say things like, oh, just to make sure that I'm well prepared for this, and do it as a lead time, right? Like don't do it 5 minutes before, but you know ask the other side, what do they want from this? What are their objectives? What is going to be a good meeting? What are they what do they want to come away with it? uh, And then also contingencies, like, what's your primary objective? If not, what's your secondary objective? What would you be happy, So, when you're a dev, you think that you're responsible. You conflate responsibility with accountability, right? That dev mindset, right? That again, that immature dev who estimates best case scenario, no contingencies, but then when something goes wrong, there's no risk management. There's no, hey, something's coming up. There's a possibility that we may not make the timeline, and I'm raising it now early. Instead, a dev would think that's a sign of weakness, a sign of, you know, of oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm saying something. No, it's risk management, right? It's a manager knowing that there's a difference between responsibility and accountability, right? So I really started to really understand things like that when you start to take on, a sales mindset, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out what are the parameters, what are the needs, user needs, which become the parameters of the requirements for the technical solution, right? And so when you're doing sales, you need to ultimately commit, be accountable, commit to that delivery, but you're not responsible for it. Some other technical guy is going to be responsible for it. So you got to think, as a dev, you're
You're the
responsible.
one. You're the one making the promise in
Yeah,
sales, but you're not the one fulfilling the promise.
you have no control. You almost, well,
Very
and
little control.
very little control unless you have a really good relationship or understand. You have very little control, and I think devs don't see that side of powerlessness. It's ultimately powerlessness, right? Like the dev. I think the classic dev looks at the salesperson and says, "Oh, why are they getting paid all that money when they don't do anything?" That's missing the point. They're taking on the risk. They're taking on the accountability, right? They're making the promises that some dev is responsible for cashing, right? And when at the end of the day, what's to stop that dev from not delivering, right? Very little, right? Ultimately, right?
I mean, even
So
if you could fire the dev, it didn't fix the
still
problem.
your problem. No, correct. It's
Yeah.
still your problem. So an immature dev thinks that they're both accountable and responsible, but a mature dev will realize, or any mature technical person, right, will realize they're responsible, but they're not accountable, right? And a really good technical person will understand risk management and raise things early, because what you're doing is you're taking accountability and you're pushing it onto someone else. You're transferring it, right? So that's like level 3, level 5,000. Yeah, technical person, right? Um, so yeah, so that sales mentality for me, that jump was realizing the difference between those two, and also and how you can work better between those two, right?
Is that what you feel kind of completed the circle for you as an entrepreneur? And were there any other things? Uh, I mean, starting out as a delivery person, as a dev, and then learning how to sell and make commitments.
Mm.
Apart from that, were there any other kind of facets to an entrepreneur that you felt you went through?
I think that's the start of it, right? Like, you can either, I think, as a technical person, starting from a technical perspective, you can either embrace that transition and realize that there's a role for everyone, right? And that's where the roles come from, right? And not hard, and not it's not one person can do it all, right? Like, you need to have a team of people, and you need to work together, and you can have a wide range of skills, and you can be interested in all those things, right? But at any one time, you need to choose a role and play your part, right? And have a equally capable person, interested and capable person in the other roles, doing their thing, right? To ensure that you've got great collaboration, and that you're thinking about all the what ifs and everything, and making sure that it's not just one person ruling it all. Um, I think that's the start of it. And once you realize that there's different roles to be played, and people put up their hand and say, "I'm going to do the best I can," and you're in a supportive environment, I think that's all you need for, especially an early stage startup, right? Like a young company, and if you've got those ingredients, you can create an organization and create the culture as you go along, and then if you, as long as everyone appreciates that transparency and all that stuff. And no one knows what they're doing. Everyone's kind of like making it up as they go. But we're in it together. I think that's a classic ingredient of a good startup, or any good team, right? Team environment.
Yeah, I remember when I also had a stint in IT sales, which was kind of my gateway to entrepreneurship as well. I remember we used to be organized. We were selling data warehouses and analytics services for a US company. They would organize us in teams of three. They call it the triad. You have the account executive, salesman. Then you would have the solution architect who would know the kind of the build phase. And then there was an industry consultant
Mm.
who kind of was a hybrid between the sales and Sol Arc, but they would come from a specific vertical or industry, and they would, in a way, take the client side. And that's actually how I started. I spent about a decade and a half in banking and finance before getting into IT, and I was hired as an industry consultant. Now, as luck would have it, our triad broke up because we didn't have a solution architect for a period. And I stepped into that role as well. And I found that really, in a way, apart from enlightening, because I would know the use cases, like what would banks want, what would insurance companies want. I have a long list of that. And now I would be neck deep into, okay, what does a SQL database do? Okay, or hardware configuration of server racks, kind of that minutia, because we had to have all three functions to sign a deal. And then at the same time, if you're also an industry consultant, you're the guy who goes deep into what the client needs. You kind
Mm.
of probe that. And that was immensely, for me, enlightening and powerful. Because as you said, you're the one, if you're selling and marketing, yeah, you have to figure out the pain points,
Yep.
propose a solution, get an agreement, and then move to next steps. I think the move to next steps part, it's subtle, but I think it really divides people who are more just reactive to what's being thrown at them. So employees are usually reactive. Hey, look, do this, do that. Okay, I'll do that. Whereas people who are more entrepreneurial, even if you're an employee, you can be entrepreneurial. You're always looking for resolution.
Mm.
Okay. So what do we need to do? By when? Okay.
Yep.
And then if you need to negotiate, then you can negotiate, whether it doesn't even have to be financial. It can be
Mm.
negotiating on the terms, negotiating on the
Correct.
timelines.
Correct.
I think similarly for me, once you figure that out, then it makes you whole, and then you can then it gives you that confidence. Okay, if I know what I'm capable of, that's one half. That's product development. If I know what the market needs and the client needs, that's the other half. That's business
Yes.
development.
Yes.
And then the remainder is just agreements on timelines, delivery, and negotiation.
Yep.
You can go anywhere.
Yeah.
At least that's how I
That's
felt about it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I take it for granted a bit now, but what you talked about was actually a big, cognitively for me, was a big focus back then of understanding how do I run this business, or how do I run projects and teams, or do business development. Was there's a pathway, right? In software development, we have our SDLC. That's very based on how do you build something. It's activity based. It's about doing it. But there's the other side of it, the milestones, deliverables, right? Budgeting, estimating, and that's the lens that I viewed doing business development, or and then delivery of the project, right? So at the end of the day, the biggest milestone is getting a contract signed, right? So what are the steps to that, getting that contract signed, right? And it's about empathy with the customer, right? And so don't be afraid, ask ask the customer, what does that look like? Because then that, because at the time I'm trying to budget my time. Do I spend my time doing business development, or do I spend my time helping out my team deliver this smart city project, right? So I need to know what are the steps to success with this customer, so that I know how much resources that I need to put on it. Or even from a personal perspective, what is divide and conquer, right? You've got this ladder, to signing on a customer. Divide and conquer. Get to that next step. Get to that next step. Remember, I've got this, and make sure you close in the moment. Make sure you close to get to the next step. To make sure that you have the what gave me confidence is getting that commitment from either me. I know that I can commit to the next step, or the other side is committed to the next step, right? Because then cognitively I can relax, right, and then start to think about the next step, right? Same with the project delivery, right? You're delivering. You've divided your scope into these tasks. How do you know if you're 50, 75, whatever percent way through? You need to go to the next step. Go to the next. What is the next step? Go to the next step, and you know that you're doing it one by one, right? And so for me, everything that I was learning, I was breaking down to what's the project template? What's the project plan for this type of project? What's the project plan for getting this type of sale? What's a project plan for whatever, right? And that gave me the confidence of because I guess really what I really realize is when you run your own business, all the resources are coming out of your pocket, right? Or if not, you've borrowed it from some investor or someone else, right? And you're controlling it, right? And so you're always aware of where these resources are going, how much resources you have left, and so you need to know where you are on a path, right?
It's like watching the gas in the tank, right?
Correct.
So you kind of you're always making this mental calculation. Okay, will
Mm.
I get to my destination? Do I need a refill? Yeah, you're right. That's pretty much top of mind of any entrepreneur. How much
Yeah.
gas is still in the tank,
Mhm.
and whether you need to raise money or you actually at the start it's more about raising money, and
Yeah.
then midway towards the end it's about collecting the money. You've done a lot
Mm.
of work for clients, and as you might have experienced, some clients pay on time, some clients pay early, and some clients pay late, some clients never pay. So
Sometimes, sometimes
that's
they
kind of
say,
a negotiation tactic as well. Like, how do you get the money once you've given the
correct,
goods?
correct. So I think maybe the thing I haven't talked about so far was doing the sales thing, getting that mindset was really having empathy with the customer, right, and just letting them asking them, what are your needs, what are your problems. You can suggest, what the solution is and what the benefits would be, but you have to play that back to the customer, right? Like, would this benefit sound good to you? Yes, and you just really start to learn how to close the loop, how to close, right? Close both, interactions, but also close in terms of solutions and stuff like that as well, right? Play things back, you know. So, and yeah, and just learn that sales empathy is about where the customer is on their journey, understanding their priorities and stuff like that. Like, you have your own, and you can where they align, you can call that out and say, hey, we've got synergies or whatever, right? Here you got these problems, we've got these capabilities. Hey, we can help you out with these. We can't help you out with these ones, but we can do these ones. And yeah, start from there. So yeah, for me it was yeah.
Just being conscious, we're nearly at the hour,
Yep.
so time flies. I just wanted to cover. So you wrapped up the business in 6 or so odd months. Um,
Well, that was the partnership, and then we went on for another, I
another
think,
year.
another year, something like that, almost another year, just doing the whole hackathons and incubator and
Okay,
stuff like
okay.
that.
So at
Yeah,
some point, you made a decision that you're gonna go back to a
correct,
corporate gig. So can you
correct.
talk through that? Because that's actually another thing that rarely is discussed. Most
Mm,
people think entrepreneurship is a one-way street. Once you're
mm,
already a business owner, there's no going back to employment land, which
mm,
we of course know. It's never say never, but
mm.
depends maybe on the reasons. So for you, what was the decision point? Go back, and maybe at the end of that, I think we've now come back full circle. You're going to start another
Yeah,
venture, right? So can you
yep.
talk through that process?
Yeah, so for me, I think for me personally, I'm at this stage, I'm still on a ride, right? These are opportunistic type of everything's opportunistic for me, right? So the reason why I was still going was one of the main reasons. So it wasn't really something that was driven from me necessarily, because at this stage you can imagine it. I'm running on fumes. I haven't been paying myself, and I've learned to really budget and cut down my costs and everything, and doing some contracting to keep the money in, trying to do the startup. By the way, we had this in this incubator. We had a startup which was based around using smart energy meters, disaggregating those signals to work out, this is a fridge turning on or this is a kettle turning on. And we were trying to be basically, because both Asian people, we're trying to build a company that allows, say, me and you, Asian working kids, to be able to monitor what's happening in the homes of their parents, elderly parents. We build a pattern of life. Every day your mum wakes up, turns on the hot water, has a shower, turns on the kettle, has a tea. What if today we don't see that? Is something gone wrong, right? Should we call someone? Anyway, we tried to do that, tried to get some seed funding. But one of the major commitments, everything's opportunistic for me, right? But one of the major commitments I had made when I hired my previous manager was we were sponsoring her visa. In Australia, she had a relationship here, but then that relationship ended. And then she's like, oh, I think I'm going to go back overseas, go back home. And then for me, it was like, well, that's the last commitment I had, for other people. And I'm sick of being poor. And you know what? I'm learning. At that point, I think the cockiness really didn't have any. It was all humility, right? Until then, because I was humbled that I got good marks in school, worked for defense, always been in a position where I didn't have to worry about making ends meet and having the opportunity to get into incubators and stuff like that. But what I realized is that none of this is really of my doing, right? Well, me consciously going, I'm going to do that. And so any cockiness that I had was just beaten out of me at that point, right? And what I realized was, I'm still learning. I'm learning how to do all this stuff. Like when I said I thought I could build it and thou shalt come, no, I know, fuck off. but if you're humble about it and you put yourself out there and you don't have any expectation, that is, I think, the other thing I let go of. Always done well in school. Asian kid. Always got top marks and everything. So I had this. When you grow up like that, you think if you do well in one part of your life, you get everything else given to you, because that's what my parents gave to me. But then I realized that to be an entrepreneur, it's about putting out there and having no expectation it'll come back. But you know what? When you do that, things will come back, right? And so what I realized is that
It's like a little bit of purity of intention, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
this is what I want to do, irrespective of whatever circumstances, trying to make ends meet.
yeah. There's a few things. When you realize that when you put out there more than what you get, that's when you start getting as well, and you just need to reflect and go, what can I improve, and just keep doing it, and just try to detach yourself from having too much pride or shame or whatever, right? When you do fail, when you do wrong. And so what I realized is that I'm just learning. I'm learning about everything. I thought the stuff that I thought I knew how to do, I actually don't know how to do it. And so
When you signed up for the job after
yeah,
wrapping up the business, did you know at the back of your head that you will get back into business eventually? Was that always
yes,
a
yeah,
nagging thought? Okay.
yeah. Because that was my first probably intentional career move. Was that I thought I realized, why am I spending my own money learning how to run a business? Are there better ways of doing it? Can I spend someone else's money, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
one of my partners at the time, yep, from doing smart cities and stuff like that. He was at DXC, and basically, got me a job there. For me, that was, I wanted something like that. I wanted a place where I could get churn, right? Because everything, some of my own business, everything was new and everything was a big deal, because it's the
Yeah.
first time I've seen it. I spending all this mental energy, resources, time, money on, but these lessons they're not new in terms of the world. It's not rocket science. People have learned these lessons before. Just I haven't learned these lessons before, right? And so I just need to be in an environment where it's training, where I get to experience all of these things that occur from sales through to delivery and support of IT services. So I want to go into an organization where I can get a job where I can just learn all that stuff, right? And get churn, right? Cycles, more the cycles, the better. So that when I went out and did something on my own again, nothing was new, or very little was new, right? And anything that was, and then I could actually use my limited resources to then focus on stuff that's actually worth focusing on, right? And DXC was perfect because DXC is an old company, but it's got heaps of customers. Projects are big and small, good and bad. And that's one of the things I learned out of working in government, right? It's actually when you work in a privileged environment like the government or work in a really top tier, when you work in perfect environments, you don't encounter problems. Well, there are problems, but different type of problems, right? What type of problems are you after? Because I'm after regular everyday problems so that I know how to solve them so that it's like water for ducks back so I can focus on bigger problems, right? And
Yeah.
so for me, so a place like DXE was perfect because, it's like delivery problems, right? The first project I had there I landed on a project. It was like, so say, we're going to put you on this project. You're going to lead this one. Oh, by the way, we're about 90% of the way through the budget and we've delivered only about 40%. You need to talk to the customer.
That's a great boot camp, in practicing, customer relations and managing
Exactly.
expectations. Okay. How long was your stint in DXC end to end?
6 years. Six
Okay.
years.
So
Yeah.
6 years, kind of a hiatus as an entrepreneur. And I remember you said you just recently asked for a package, right, to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Recently just got a package. So that was really good. I mean, it was up to me to choose. I mean, timing would have been different, but for me, I'd been wanting to do something for myself for a while. So being offered something was great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. So it comes back full circle. You came in fresh out of your entrepreneurship stint, lots of painful lessons learned,
Yeah.
and then you went through a 6 year basically paid boot camp. And then when did you know the time was right? You said if there could be various timings, right? But coming close to the point where you finally said, okay, I'm gonna be asking for a package.
Yeah, I think well you get there's a saying you grow was it you earn, you learn or neither, right? Or you quit. Um when you work in a large company, I was a bit fortunate when I joined DXC. I joined a business unit that was acquired, and so at that time it was still operating a bit independently, but it was able to draw on the resources of the wide organization. So it was a good place to be, right? Um, and and for me at least, because I worked in a team that was a bit on the outer, we had to, even as a solution architect, I had to do a bit of internal sales, right? We had to partner with other sales organizations within the wider organization or other business units to go into joint projects together, JV projects, right? And so I was still able to be quite entrepreneurial within that environment. And then as we were integrated or merged into the wider organizations, some of that, started to go away. And so once we were really integrated into the wider organization, then it was really like it was just bigger organization, more rigid processes. You have less ownership and breadth of your responsibilities, right? And so for me, it got to a point where I was a bit less engaged, and starting to think about how I can uh, what to do next, right?
Did you get
So
more like restless, or did you know that as the time passes, the point when you need to kind of throw
it
in
is
the
you do,
towel and go
yeah,
back to
you
entrepreneurship?
know it. Look,
Yeah.
you know it. You get less restless. Um, you know, I like having ownership of things, and I there was less ownership. and I wasn't enjoying it as much. I wasn't as engaged, and I was seeing, other people do things, and because ChatGPT went really big, was about 2 years ago, end of 2022, right? You start to see things happen, but also people making moves. Not necessarily people moving out of DXC to go into AI, but people moving out of DXC to do other things, to do businesses themselves. And so as I started seeing that, the urge for me started to really get going. For me, was fortunate that ChatGPT, kind of came on the scene when it did. Probably about a year ago, I decided I'm going to get back on the tools and learn how to create apps using these LLMs. And yes, started to plan. I wasn't sure exactly what was going to happen, but I knew that what I would like to, this was an opportunity, and I need to get back on the tools because I've been through this hype cycle with IoT before, right? I fell into it, but IoT, it's one of these, when you're in a hype cycle, it's very easy to do a POC or do a demo or do something small, but it's very hard to get productionized, right? Because it's
Right.
an ecosystem play, and there needs to be the reorganization of the market, the ecosystem partners, and or organizations of the customers, right? The organizations that want to adopt and implement these things, maybe they need to reorganize themselves. So it's one of those things where you just need time, needs to play out, right? But having been through that before, I could kind of like pick a strategy so that I was there when the time is right. So that was.
So maybe as a kind of a last discussion, and we got to save some for the next
Mm.
episode. um, can you talk through that kind of the thesis or the emerging thesis for AI that
Yeah.
you've decided to pursue? I think it's kind of still a work in progress at the moment, but what's the main thing that you see, especially with generative AI, that's giving you the opportunity?
Yeah. So I guess my viewpoint is kind of influenced by, I guess, where I've been lately with DXC. So if you can imagine, as a solution architect, working in the business unit DXC that's aligned to delivering Microsoft. So we're a Microsoft partner and we're delivering Microsoft solutions. Probably a bit influenced by the Microsoft / OpenAI view of landscape in terms of technology landscape. But in DXC as a Microsoft partner, business apps, they've got a thing called business apps, right? So we're a bit influenced by that. So if you can imagine in the business apps, so we're talking about things like Dynamics, ERP, CRM, Power Platform, Microsoft M365. It's all business related stuff, right? One of the lenses of viewing things is through, is it out of the box? Is it customization? Oh, sorry, configuration, which is like low code or configure something, click, click, tap, tap, or do we fully customize? Do we do just good old fashioned software development, right? So when I view it through that lens, and then when I view that AI is currently on the Gartner hype cycle, right? We're still going to the peak of, was it the peak of expectation or peak of the peak, right? Before we get to the trough of disillusionment, right?
Inflated expectations.
Inflated expectations, that's right. So I think that's where we still are, and that's why you have all this investment, have all these promises, and that's why little demos are really easy and nice and get a lot of attention. But when people try to actually implement real things, they realize that there are limitations, or they get to the peak of disillusionment, right? And so, as a single person, even as DXC, right, like as DXC or someone like Essential, something like that, they're doing the services, right? They're doing implementations. Ultimately, it's Anthropic, it's the hyperscaler, AWS, Azure, who produce the product, right? And that product is scalable, right? And so when a new customer sees this new technology like IoT or AI, they're not going to plonk down, $100,000, $50,000, $400,000, $1 million to get DXC Accenture to do a project because what you know, like we don't know what the solution looks like. We don't know that we're going to come in on budget, on time, and scope. We don't know what that customization is going to look like, right? So naturally, in terms of the initial products that come out, plus they're going to try out of the box and configuration, right? Because that's less risk, right? But what they tend to hit is the limitations of those types of products, because these technologies aren't mature. Yes, a lot of people are trying to push these products, but they're not mature, right? And as consumers, we can kind of play with them and we can use them enough for our individual use case, but for an enterprise to adopt these things, right, it needs to be somewhat mature. And so anything that's out of the box or configuration at this stage, it's going to be totally different in the next month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. So strategically, either as an individual by myself or either as a services organization where you're not trying to push, compete in the out of the box and configuration type solutions, right? Or see cash flow now. I think you need to be a bit more strategic and differentiate yourselves from the hyperscalers or the open AIs or the guys that are making those products right now. And so for me, I've taken the path of learning the programming patterns that are evolving, that are emerging out of using these LLMs and aligning myself with LangChain, a package like LangChain, so that personally I can learn. Well, what are the different programming patterns? What are the architectures? What are the technology stacks of these LLM type applications, right? And just learning through that, and then also taking the strategic approach of when customers realize the limitations of out of the box and configuration solutions, they'll want customized, right? If they want something now, they'll need to have some sort of customized approach, right? So
you're looking to play in that kind of the customization space, which
correct.
will probably grow over time, right? At the moment,
Correct.
everyone's still
Correct.
just discovering the tools.
If I can sum it up in one statement, everyone's selling picks and shovels, but who's mining the gold right now? No one's mining the gold. And at the moment, right? At the moment, customization is the only only pathway I see to mining gold right now, right? Yes, Microsoft is getting return on their investment, but their return is not AI, right? Their return as a hyperscaler is getting any consumption of Azure. It's not necessarily increased consumption of their AI offerings, right? They're using investment in AI to drive overall Azure revenue. So I guess depends what you depends your offering and how you actually your business model. I guess but I think from where I stand as an individual, I'm playing in that customization approach to hopefully be the first to mine some gold.
I think that's a good enough place as any to end for now. Maybe before we go, maybe for now, any
Yeah.
last thoughts you'd like to give the audience before we conclude?
Yeah, you put me on the spot here. I don't know if any last thoughts, but I think, at this stage, there are a lot of things that are happening that are exciting. I'm participating in Container X. We can talk about it next time, but that's a open source industry driven initiative by the German automotive sector to produce some open source tools, which I'm involved in, and I'm hoping to create some LLM powered applications as part of that. But basically, I'm going to start some of my own open source initiatives, and I think it's really exciting. I'd encourage anyone who's listening at this stage. As I said, no one's mining any gold, no one's digging any gold, right? So it's a free for all at this stage. So I'm going to start some things. I'd love to, connect with people who would like to get involved right now while things, no one's really built a killer application yet, right? So yeah, that's the main thing is, it's gonna. I think these things. I've had a few early successes. We haven't talked about it now. We'll talk about it next time. But I've had some early successes using LLMs to deliver projects for DXC. So I definitely subscribe to, it's not going to, people saying, someone AI is not going to take your job. It's going to be someone using AI to take your job, and I've experienced that, right? So, but I think it's not limited to technical people, right, who can take advantage of AI. So, yeah, so I'd like to encourage if anyone reach out to me or let me know what you're doing, or if you want to get involved in whatever I'm doing. But yeah, that's final
We'll
thoughts.
we'll have C's contact details in the video description. But at this point, I want to thank you, C, for giving us some of your time, sharing your story, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your successes in in the months to come. It's a very fast moving space, and I mean, it's very inspiring to see someone kind of do the seesaw from corporate to entrepreneurship, back to corporate, and now back with a vengeance to entrepreneurship. That's just awesome to hear. Thank you very much for joining the conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on, and thank you for replying when I reached out on LinkedIn during Filipino Startup Week,
Yeah,
which I would encourage everyone who's able to participate in that next year when it comes up again. So yeah, thank you very
yeah,
much.
yeah. Who knows? Maybe that's when maybe you might be presenting in Philippine Startup Week. Who knows, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, let's make that happen.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Doc.